Okay, we will call the Finance Committee meeting to order. We'll start with our County Clerk, Joe Provenza. Good morning.
Good morning. Hopefully you've received the reports that were emailed to you. We'll start with the January report if possible. The recording side of the office was very busy. We were up with deeds, we were up with income as well. The DMV was a little less busy, but we're hoping that everyone was in Florida, so they'll be coming back and doing the registrations. There are a couple things I need to draw to your attention in this report. Pistol permits are out of this world. Everyone getting their old pistol permits up to snuff so that they can recertify, and we're answering questions and everything else. So that has been busy. There are a couple resolutions here. The first being the annual counting of money. I will review that at the next the next report that I do. There is a resolution there to increase DMV revenues retention. Right now we're at 12.7. They're asking, the Association of County Clerks is asking to increase that. However, I'm asking you just to review it, not do any action on it right now. As the association passed out this resolution, at the same time we found out that in the executive budget they're asking to increase title fees from $50 for a new title to $75, and as well as a duplicate title going from $20 to $40. So I need to do more research myself, and I will write a letter to the manager and the chairman. Are they increasing the title fees to give us more money, or are they going to increase it anyway? I do not want to put the board susceptible to any ridicule saying we're going to ask for more money, but then increase the title fees for our constituents. Some people, when they get done with the new registration with this new title fee, will actually pay more than they will for the car. So we have to be we have to understand that.
The irony of that is here the state did it, just bang, done, and we debated it for years.
Yes.
Never did it to increase, which we could have done by local law.
Yes.
And put the money back in the highways. And they did it anyway, and we're not getting a cent of it.
No. So my annual report is the next.
Joe, did you want action on your place on file, your annual accounting report?
No, I'll put that in with this annual report here.
Okay.
The other one. The annual report, it was a very good year for 2016. The actual overview is you budgeted for my expenses with the DMV and records management $1.3 million. We actually expended 1.3, so there was a difference of $31,000 that we did not expend. Revenues went from 1.9 million, which you asked. We actually brought in 2 million with a difference of 75,000 more. We were able to turn back to the county $723,782.46. So that was a pretty good year. And pistol permit records, again, that's showing what we did with pistol permits in the DMV. I also put in there now the annual report. We brought in, pursuant to law, I have to turn the annual report over to the Board of Supervisors clerk by February 1st. We brought in, for fees and everything else, $10,400,000, and that's what we wrote checks out for the year. So that's where we need a resolution of approval.
Someone move that, please. Moved by Mr. Merrihew. Is there a second? Mr. Morrow. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Then you have the official letters that have to go out every year to the Board of Elections, to different state agencies to open up the year. I had my accounts certified by the treasurer and the petty cash. The next thing on the list would be my goals for 2017. Also, what the new online system, what we've increased in viewing. I've also given you a list of all my employees and their phone numbers in case someone needs to be contacted. I gave you a list of the organizational chart and what the county clerk does by law and by statute. I also have, the only thing I have left to present to you would be the identity card. I'd like to charge $5 for that. That fee needs to be set by the state, or by the county, I'm sorry.
So I need a motion on that, so Joe can provide, right now, if you want to get into a little detail, Joe, it's a big hassle trying to get ID if you don't have a driver's license.
Right.
And I've been approached by a number of my constituents who no longer have driver licenses, but that need some kind of an ID. So I think it's a good move that we need to offer this service. I'm not sure if $5 is too cheap, I don't know, but if you think that'll cover all.
Whatever you want, I came up with a number. We can go to 10?
I would think 10 would be very reasonable and fair and help cover some of the county costs.
Okay.
So there's a resolution on the floor that the county clerk be authorized to offer photo IDs for a fee of $10. Moved by Mr. Politi, second by Mr. Gillen. Is there discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. All's carried.
And that's it, sir.
Any questions for Joe? If not, Joe, very good report.
Thank you.
Very thorough. Thank you. Brenda Sullivan? Good morning.
Good morning. My report was emailed out to the committee, but I would like to bring up assigned counsel. Sore subject. We budgeted for 2016 $512,000. So far, we've spent $611,653.83, and I have a sizable stack of claims to process on my desk. I really feel we're going to hit the $700,000 mark for 2016 claims.
So, we need a resolution. What are we looking at?
We're good.
Just a report.
It's just to update you. We have a year-end resolution that'll move the money.
I mean, we've been discussing this forever, and I'm going to talk to the county attorney. I don't know why this has taken so long to resolve. Mr. Gillen.
I spoke with the county attorney about 2 weeks ago on this issue. He reported to me that he was going to go to the Bar Association to talk about the changes that were recommended. And the Bar Association appointed a committee, and the committee has never met. So I did discuss with him, and he said he was going to be working on getting a cost benefit for, basically for hiring one or two defense, attorneys for the Public Defender's Office, just so we can get those numbers, and I haven't seen those yet.
Well, there's a $100,000 hole right in the budget from last year, so. All right, Dan, maybe you can speak to him also. I'm sorry, Jim?
Yeah, just now, since with what Sean's enlightened us with, we've done our due diligence, because Dan was always telling us that we had to approach the Bar Association before we've done this. We have approached them. They're failing to act. So now, does that allow us to act in a way that we can help solve this problem?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the direction.
I'm not really sure of that. Again, the problem with all of this is the provisions of 18B is pretty strict about the language that specifically identifies that any plan adopted by a county has to be approved by the Bar Association. I don't know how you get around that language, regardless of whether they have or have not responded or moved. It doesn't mean you couldn't proceed. and I think Dan would tell you that you can propose something and put it out there, and then the Bar Association's going to have to react one way or another. But just to be clear, though, that 18B language is pretty much a stumbling block for going on.
So our policy of paying travel time, of paying
Those
this
kinds of
per
things.
hour rate as they drive to court, we can't change that?
Well, you can, and again, it's up to the Bar Association to say, wait a minute, we disagree.
Well, they're never going to accept that. We know that.
Yeah.
So, other counties, and I know because I've looked into this, contract out for this service with different law firms, Clinton County being one of them.
Yeah, we talked about that.
So, it's to expect the Bar Association to take money out of their own pocket is never going to happen.
You mean the fox in charge of the hen house?
Exactly. The tail's wagging the dog, or whatever you want to call it. So,
Correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the understanding when I started a year ago that there was a plan already to correct some of this. Am I correct in assuming that?
Did we make some of those changes?
We had some ideas, but nothing has been changed.
Nothing has happened in that year.
Nothing has happened. No.
I mean, we need to step up our efforts in making these changes.
do you want Dan to come down? Here. Pardon?
He's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Wasn't here for his reports.
Yeah, if he's here, I think he
said
should.
to call
I
him. We need to know.
mean, this is an expensive issue. Roby?
I know we talked, because I raised the issue about judge coming in, talking to us about it.
Yeah. You did.
It's happened 2 or 3 times. Was he ever invited? He's assigning the counsel, right?
No, technically, all judges assign counsel. They have the authority to assign counsel. What judges are not supposed to do is they're not supposed to have discussions with the policymakers as it relates to how those assignments are paid for. Judges are supposed to be excluded from the financial part of the discussion.
Okay.
Certainly the procedural part he could talk about, but he can't talk about.
Because we were concerned at one time about lawyers being assigned from other counties,
Right.
and us having to pay for travel time and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think at one point I had spoken with the judge about it, and he said, well, he does that because there's no one
Nobody's
local
responded
to do
locally.
it.
Yeah.
Now, I can't, it's hard to believe that there's no local judges, but at least I'd love to hear
Yeah.
from him.
And I think you would be, able to hear from the judge in terms of the procedural part, in terms of the financial.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dan. Brenda just made the board aware of 2016, we're about $100,000 over what we had budgeted for assigned counsel. I think we're like $611,000.
Right now, we're at 611, and I anticipate closer to 7 when I'm through.
We budgeted for 512, so during this discussion on these doom and gloom numbers, the board, the committee is wondering what's going on with it.
Okay. I don't know where to start here. As I explained in previous discussions, there's 3 options that I've always, well, first of all, let me digress. There's a statute that details what can be done for assigned counsel and how it can be handled. It can be handled either by an assigned counsel plan through a bar association, through a legal aid society, which we don't have, through the public defender's office, or for any combination of any of those things. In the event nothing is set up, a judge has discretion as to how to handle it. So we have to evaluate those different options and to see which is the most cost-effective, and it doesn't seem like any of them are going to really even change things much. Kind of put this on the back burner, waiting for, we thought the governor was going to sign the DeFrancisco bill, which would have allowed the state would have paid for the assigned counsel in increments beginning in 2017, I think, in certain percentages until they paid the whole thing. So that was put on the back burner for that. There's also, we've had discussions with the Bar Association to try to do things with them. I met with the Bar Association and got an earful, and we haven't agreed on anything in that department. I don't know what you said, the budget's, or it's, well, let me, go ahead.
I guess, I mean, the option with the Bar Association, I mean, how's that working? We can see it's not. Does the county have the authority to hire a couple of attorneys, which would be considerably less than $700,000 a year, even with salary and benefits? I mean...
Well, the county, yes, the county, through the Public Defender's Office, could hire, you'd probably need 3 or 4 people, which would create another layer of bureaucracy, and I'm not against this, but 3 or 4 people, if you add a salary of whatever, $55,000 to $65,000 a person, together with benefits, together with secretaries, together with overhead, you're probably approaching the $600,000 mark. So that's why that has to be carefully considered. Do you want to jump into that? Do you want to create?
We've been jumping for 20 years. I mean, we just need to get a handle on this.
Well,
I mean, they're milking us, so I'll be very blunt.
who is?
The attorneys. We're paying them their hourly rate to drive in a car, okay, from their office to court, plus mileage on top of that. That's milking the system. I don't care how you cut it.
Well, that's the way most counties do it, I think.
That's not the way most counties do it.
Okay, you're an expert, Tom.
I'm not an expert.
I see me instead of bring me into this out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. We've been discussing this for years.
Well, then, tell me when you want to talk about it, instead of bringing me in here cold. But anyway, let me finish. So, process needs to be, you need to consider these things. If you're going to create I'm all for, I don't think it would be a problem setting up 3 or 4 people under the Public Defender's Office, but it may create a huge bureaucracy, which will grow and grow and grow, as we know, and may exceed what we're paying now, rather than explore continuing to do assigned counsel. Now, the other thing to do is, like I said, Clinton County contracts out with individuals for assigned counsel for family court. That's not in the law, and I've been told by the Office of Indigent Services, Legal Services, and the New York State Public Defender's Office and others that that's not legal. So we could try that and contract out with some people, but I can't guarantee that we might not get thumped down on that. What you would do there is you'd hire those 2 or 3 people at a salary. You would save money in that respect because there'd be no overhead, there'd be no secretaries. They would get a flat fee to do a certain amount of cases each month. You'd need the Bar Association to supplement that as far as conflicts, and you could do it that way. So you got Bar Association, you can try the contracting route, or you can hire 3 or 4 public defenders to do the work. And I can give you a better report if you want. I can give you numbers and stuff. But it's real easy to just say, oh, wow, this is way out of hand, but you really got to take a look at it. If you want to fund a whole new department, or segment of a department.
I'm not jumping on you.
No, I know, and I didn't mean to get mad.
I'm not an expert, but I'm not stupid either, okay? I mean, I can see what's going on. Do we have to pay, it'd be interesting if you could take those bills and find out how much we're paying attorneys to sit in their car and drive here.
Oh, it's in here, it's in the report.
There's a case where one attorney, I think his overall bill was somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,000. His legal fees were about $1,200, and his travel time was like $2,000-some. But the problem is, we did pass a resolution, trying to mess with those fees, but the Bar Association really has to agree to that. I thought we'd be able to kind of slide that through, explaining to the Bar Association, listen, you got to work with us a little bit. If you don't, there's a good chance that you won't be around anymore to do assigned counsel. The board may go with contractors or probably more likely to employ people. So you can do those are the things. And I apologize, I didn't mean to get mad. But
Listen,
but you were yelling at me first, though.
I didn't yell, but I tend to bring out the best in people. Randy?
Well, first of all, we were talking a
amongst ourselves, and if it got into a wrestling match there, we weren't going to break it up until it went for 20 minutes or so. So the question, as far as on the state level, I think this year, something's going to happen with the indigent defense. However, the question I have for Brenda is, it does not include, it's only criminal. It does not include family court. So how much of that $611,000 is family court?
Randy, I'm not sure about that. I may have made that...
I am.
You are? Because I made that statement early on. I read the statute, and it doesn't say that. But then
Yeah, it didn't specifically identify what...
It only is going to cover what that
Are you absolutely...
herring or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's not over till it's over, but that's what I'm being told.
I brought that up to the state when it first came out. I said, hey, I don't see, this just says criminal, criminal, criminal all through it. And they said, no, it means both. But
No, it doesn't. But anyways, that's another debate. So,
A
Brenda?
figure for you. As of February 1st, we had spent $515,000 in assigned counsel. $89,938 of that was criminal court. The rest was family, $425.
Interesting. Thank you.
Mr. Gillen?
I mean, I just think that, if you want to get out of a hole, the first thing to do is drop the shovel and stop digging. We need to do something and do it quickly, and maybe a message to the Bar Association or something, but I think we need to take a real hard look, with a cost analysis of the costs that would be due to hire in-house.
I'm assuming we contract with each of these attorneys individually.
yes.
So, is there anything that prohibits the Board of Supervisors from changing the policy that we're not paying your hourly rate when you get to court, that's when your rate starts? And obviously, there's going to be doing work in their office and so on, I get that. But the travel time and that is just...
I'll give you that answer off the record because it's legal advice. I don't want to...
Isn't that what, if I understand this conversation, the Bar Association has to approve any of this, and isn't that what you've already gone to them about?
They have to
As
approve
far
it.
as the travel and all that? So,
Yes.
to me, that's dead in the water.
Well,
We need another approach.
Well, it's not dead in the water. They've established a committee, but I haven't heard from the committee, so...
Now, is it the judge that's making these assignments right now?
Yes.
I think we ought to go Roby's suggestion and have the judge come in and meet with us then, and see if we can get these assignments more in the Essex County rather than the Warren, Clinton County arena.
Right. I have spoken with the judge, and Brenda and I have spoken with the judge, and I think he's amenable to that as long as there are enough people to serve.
That's the problem, is
There's only like
not
10 or
enough
11
attorneys that are willing to accept assigned counsel in the county. So a good number of our attorneys are from Warren and Saratoga County, down that way, which is roughly $300 to $400 every time they come up here for travel time and mileage.
And just as an aside, I mean, assigned counsel is just booming everywhere. I mean, it's just not us, it's everywhere. With the new counsel at arraignment, sort of quasi-rule, everybody's feeling this pinch. Honestly, I don't think, whatever we do may save us a little money, but I don't think it's going to save us a tremendous amount of money, but we will do it. Another thing that's on the horizon that you should be aware of, I brought it up a couple times, is currently 16 and 17-year-olds that commit crimes are considered adults, and they're tried in the criminal courts most of the time. There's new legislation in the hopper, which was, it's been there for a while, but it seems like it's going to come to fruition, that they're going to drop 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds that commit crimes down into the juvenile, the JD arena, which is going to cause a huge problem and be a huge expense to the counties. Various organizations are working to try to get funding for that because it's really going to be a heavy hit when it does come down the pike. So that's another component, sort of related.
So, what do you recommend? Where do we go?
I can get you a report as to the options, and you can pick an option if you wish. And maybe if I can get the Bar Association to agree to what we had passed before, I believe, Brenna, what's that save, 100 and some thousand?
We saved roughly $100,000 a year.
We could do that right now, and then you can consider what you want to do with the other things, as to whether it'll be cost effective. I mean, you really have to give a hard thought to setting up 4 new employees. And will they be used exclusively by the public defender for family court, or will we sneak them over? I don't know. Plus the support staff.
Okay, anything further on this issue? So, I'm sorry.
We get to vote on whether you're stupid or not?
So, from here, you're gonna run some numbers, different options, and,
Yeah, it shouldn't be hard to do. I'm going to have them, but...
approach the Bar Association again.
Right. And the reason I've left it on the burner is because we thought the governor was going to sign this into law for the longest period. And then really, all the numbers seem to almost be the same. And I understand, so again, I apologize.
Not a problem. Okay, anything else, Brenda?
That's all I have. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Brenda? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, treasurer? Yeah, Mike?
When I get done with this, I'm not going to ask if there's any questions, because we'll be here all day. First thing is on the sales tax, and it's early in the year. Although it is kind of winding up our 2016 budget, because as many of you realize, part of what comes in 17 belongs to the 16 budget. That got changed many years ago. But the first month in January, we were down about 40,000 over last year. The second month, we gained about 6,000, so net for the year so far, we're down about 32 or 33,000, something like that. It's early in the year as far as annual money to be too concerned about it, but just want to get you up to date. We did get all of our February numbers in after I gave you the report. We just got them in this week, so just want to bring you right up to date that we gained a little over 6,000 in February back from there, so we're a little under 34,000 down from last year.
Any questions on that sales tax?
Occupancy, with the January revenue that we take in, that is for December rooms that are rented, so that completes the year as far as we're concerned, the budget year for 2016, and you can see that it was about almost 284,000 more than last year. Obviously, a lot of that was from vacation rentals. I think we did pretty well. It picked up steam as the year went along, and we finally got the word out. I think what happened with a lot of people, they've signed up to be annual filers, which really means they don't have to file until March of 2017 for what they collected, but they chose to file in December. They used a different set, which is fine. We just took their money. We're not going to argue with them, tell them to hang on to it. They wanted to send their money, and we took it. I think the telling tale on this will be a year from now when we look at it and start comparing it from one year to the next, because it's difficult to tell you how much is in revenue just from vacation rentals. I will tell you, we're still getting inquiries. I just got two people signed up this week, one Monday and one Tuesday, that are still contacting us telling they're getting vacation rentals, so it's still coming around that people haven't signed up that are.
Any questions on that topic?
Expenses, just in the budget for the year, I give you my expenses. It's early to be concerned with that. And also, cash flow for the year, as far as net disbursements over receipts, we did pretty well. We were a little over $5 million to the good. So it means we didn't spend as much as we took in, which is always good, helps build up your fund balance. It's a good thing. I want to move on quickly to give you an update on where we are with foreclosures. 2012 and 13. 2012 was already searched for us in-house by the county clerk's office. 2013 tax year was searched by the title companies that we hired. They are completed. The letters are ready to be mailed. They will hit the mail Friday. We have a date set with to publish next week. You'll see publication in the newspaper, in the Press Republican, and the Post-Star on February 21st, again on March 7th, and again on March 21st. But prior to that, by law, we have to mail the notifications out. So the legal notifications, both certified and first class, are all ready. They're postmarked. They've been copied. They're all ready to hit the mail on Friday. I'm going to deliver them to the post office Friday morning. They will be in the mail Friday, so Saturday your phone may ring if you get a phone. But there was a little timing in doing this. It's a long weekend and it's a holiday, so maybe your phone won't ring till Tuesday. But the list I know that Dan sent out to you, Dan Manning sent you a list of who's on there. There's two schedules, a Schedule A and B. Obviously, A is for the 12 list and B is for the 13s. Last return date is June 1st. You have to give them a minimum 90 days. We usually like to go a few days over just to be sure that everybody is covered and that we haven't missed anybody. And that also helps us if we get a mailing back and we have to search for an alternate address and we come up with a different address, either through contact the post office or Surrogate's Court or real property, and come up with a different address. We have to remail that again and give them some additional time. So we usually set it for a little more than 90 days. But the return date is, for last date to redeem is June 1st. As soon as June 1st is done, we will move quickly to get to the court with an application for foreclosure. I would anticipate if there's no delays there that we should have an auction first part of July, no later than mid-July, providing there's no, and that's for 12 and 13. In the meantime, the 2014 year has already been completed by the title searchers. They are now working on the 15s. 15 is just started, so it's early, but they are underway. They've done a part of it. I would anticipate that they're going to be done with the 15s well before this last redemption date of June 1st. So my plan in talking to the county attorney is to get this 2014 and 15 foreclosure started even before the first one ends. I would expect that we're probably going to get notifications out. Once we get these searches, we'll get them ready to be mailed out. I would expect they're going to hit the street probably mid-May, maybe as late as June, but that'll give them June, July, and August with a return date first part of September. Once we get that return date first to the middle part of September, we'll then set a foreclosure date, which should be the end of October and even into November. But the goal is to get them completed this year in the 4 years. And then from there, we will be working on the 16s. The 16s are being searched back by the county clerk's office. And as soon as those are done, we are at that point where we should be by law, where we're starting after 2 years. So everything is good.
And then at that point, when it sounds like it's going very well, then we go back to, we no longer have the contractual agreement.
That's right.
Now it's like we go back to doing it.
That's right. The contractual agreement was only for the 13, 14, and 15 years. The 16s are back in the hands of the county clerk's office again, and they will stay that way. We contracted just for those 3 years. As I said, the first 2 years have been completed. The third year they're working on now, and it's gone pretty smoothly. We have copies of all that, which we can provide to anybody that wants to look at them.
Mr. Monty.
Mike, that's fantastic. I think this has gone better than anticipated. My question is, we had a rough number that we thought it was going to cost. We thought the properties, after we did the first sales, did those taxes that were owed, people knew they were coming in and paying, I believe, if I'm correct. So have the numbers decreased of searches that we've had to do substantially?
Not substantially. We got an early influx. You're probably referring to that letter we sent out in September.
Right.
That's saying after the first year we're stepping up our procedures. We got it early on, we did. Then as the year went later on, it kind of tapered off. Those that were going to pay came in and took care of it. those that weren't going to pay regardless how many notices you got them, kind of, that's still out there. We are going to send out approximately 1,400 notices this time for the 2 years. Obviously, 14 and 15 are going to be a little higher, unless they get paid between now and June. But I would expect it's going to be closer to a couple thousand notices on those.
We'll get another influx of payment when it hits the...
When it hits the paper, you'll get it early on. As soon as it hits the paper, you'll get a chunk of them. And, we're telling people every day that call here, we're saying, here's the situation. We're not sugarcoating it. We're saying, here's our dates. We have a target date for you to foreclose on June 1st. There's no going past that. This is a hard date. And for those of you who have 14 and 15s, if you're calling me to ask me about when am I going to be foreclosed on if I own a 14, I'm telling them you're going to be by September 1st. You better have it paid if you don't want to be in trouble with it.
So, thank you.
So we are trying to push that with them, and hopefully we'll get a good response. But we'll be on target after this to it. I did have a couple of letters during the month, and I want to review them with them. I did review them with the county attorney, and I know he's not here again, but I did speak with him, and I think we're in agreement on it. First one has to do with a parcel in the town of Jay that someone has sent a letter requesting, actually called first, and I told him to send this letter, requesting relief of the penalties and interest for not paying their school tax that got re-levied. The letter is pretty clear. It says check was not received by you. I assume it was due to postal error. I explained to the person when they called that we could relieve the penalties, potentially relieve the penalty, but the interest had to be relieved by the school district. So there's two different steps to this. We would only, if we took action, would only be the 7% re-levy. But in my opinion, we didn't make any mistake. Somewhere it got lost in the mail. They're fully aware of it. They pay all the time, so they're aware that the tax is there. They sent me a copy of the check when it came back to them, so they must, or either that or before they sent it, they took a copy of the check. But in talking with Mr. Manning, we both agreed that there wasn't anything that the county did in error, so we didn't feel we should re-levy it, or pay the re-levy back. What the school district chooses to do is obviously up to them. I haven't spoken to them about it. That would be my recommendation that we don't do anything with the penalty.
So that would require no action.
If we take no action, then I'll just notify them that they chose not to take any action.
Discussion. Does anyone want to move that we...
I would move that we would follow the recommendations of the county treasurer and the county attorney and not allow our refund of that amount of money on the county behalf.
No action.
I don't know if you want to do a resolution, because then you got to go through all the way through.
I think it's best if we not take any action, and it is...
If you do a resolution, you're going to go to Ways and Means and a regular meeting and all that before you make any finality on it. It'd probably be easier if we didn't take any.
No action.
Yeah.
Not going anywhere with it.
And essentially, you've established on the public record your position, so the individual could read the minutes and see where that came from.
The second one is a letter that actually was addressed to Mr. Skazavalva, and he passed it on to me. They got a copy of it, and I'm not sure you may have got a copy from me as well. But it has to do with a situation where a person had a mortgage taken out. They were essentially taken out by someone else other than them, but it was against their property. And in the meantime, this has gone through the legal process. It hasn't been paid. The banks have had some errors in what they've done. The people that currently own it are trying to rectify the situation. They have been in and paid some of the back taxes. They owed, I believe, 15 and 16 taxes. They paid the 16 taxes. Of course, now the 17 are out, they've got to pay the 17 before they can go back, pay the 15. But the essence of the letter was to ask for some additional time. As I said to Mrs. Skazavalva, this is going to be part of the 14 and 15 foreclosures, so there's still some time out there for them to be dealing with this. But in reality, I don't think we can grant them additional time. There's nothing we've made an error on in our way. And in reviewing it with the county attorney, he felt the same thing, that It's just that they're going to have some additional time because it's not part of this immediate foreclosure. It's going to be in the second loan you do later on. So they're going to have until September probably to figure this out. And hopefully by then their situation with the banks and all that will take over.
They're not disputing the tax. I mean, they have...
No, they're not disputing the tax, absolutely. No, they're just asking for some additional time to request.
Trying to, they're trying to figure out why the bank hadn't paid them when the house was actually
Right.
foreclosure. They come out of foreclosure, they assumed that it was paid, so at this point in time, we probably should readdress it when it gets closer to the...
Yeah, it's just right. But at this point, there's no immediate jeopardy for them, and there's time to it. There's one other thing that he didn't put on the agenda that I want to quickly give you. It came about later on.
Just a question, Mike. Because of the situation and everything that's going on, we get, say, into September, October, and their legal situation still isn't resolved, that would help rectify the situation. Can we pull that property off the tax sale?
I would ask the county attorney. I don't know of any reason. There is something in real property law called a certificate of withdrawal, and that withdrawal says that there may be a legal impediment to this. We may be able to use that as a reason. It's a kind of a dangerous precedent to get into, I think, if you do that, unless there's some real hard facts that this is going to be done. But there are options that we have that we could look into to withdraw the parcel if we needed to. I'm not sure that qualifies under that, but I'd ask the county attorney for his advice on that.
We can request documentation from this gentleman, Mr. Kubik, from the bank and so on,
Right.
so we can,
But I'm not sure that a legal impediment is an impediment that we've caused. A legal impediment would be something that's a county legal issue, and this really isn't a county legal issue, so I'm not sure we could use that excuse, but we could confer and see if that would work at that time, potentially.
Thank you.
I think you could probably use it if the legal issue somehow became our legal
Right,
issue.
if we were party to it. The last thing, and there's a proposed revision in the law that's being recommended in the state budget, and that's to revise real property law 928A. 928A allows us to take in partial payments from the towns for that what we call our 4-pay plan, where the towns all take in January, February, March, and April, take 25%. The proposal is to revise that completely and just allow partial payments anytime during the year. I think to me, it's a tough precedent to do. We have that in place now, so we are allowing it. So part of the legislation is interesting, and this is where the state does things differently. They write, if you don't opt out of it, then you're automatically in it. So it might take, if it does pass, we either have to opt out of it or come up with our own plan. We do have a plan now, so I'm trying to find out if our plan supersedes it, if we can continue to do it. If what we do now is no longer legal, then every town out there is going to have to accept partial payments during the tax collection year rather than the way we do it now. And you all would have to set your own way of doing it.
So you're saying that a town, currently Mariah collects 4 payments.
Right.
And I can tell you it's been a godsend for many people, and we have certainly have no issues meeting the warrant.
No.
Since we extended it to the 4-payment option. But now you're saying that the town can extend that to 12 months?
No, because your warrant still has to be returned to us.
Right.
But if we can't do the 928A the way we divide it now, then each town may have to devise a plan of how they're going to accept partial payments. In other words, it doesn't allow us as a county to set the policy of how we're going to do it. It allows each municipality to do it. So, for instance, your town may say, we'll accept anything $100 or more, or you could say $50, or you could say, well, we'll set a policy that anybody who wants to come in and pay $25, we'll take it.
That's right, I see what you're saying now.
The problem is if each town does it differently, it creates a big problem in the tax collection system in the program that you use on how you do that, because our program, I'm not sure we could even use our program at that point, that you'd probably have to go out and buy your own programs to allow partial payments of taxes. Now, once it comes back to the county then has to have a policy how we're going to accept partial payments. We're going to set a policy, a minimum of $25 or whatever, $50. But we'll have to have a policy that says how much we'll allow them to pay. So they can come in anytime to pay a partial payment under this law.
So what action are you, so is this an action?
No, nothing, we
don't need to wait?
No, I'm not even sure it's going to pass.
All right.
I just want to make you aware of it, that we may end up revising this whole 928 that we use
I
now.
have noticed since the payment plan came into place, which, by the way, I pushed for years.
Absolutely. Yep.
That a number of people, because the school tax is so high, they will let it re-levy over onto the property.
Because they can't afford to do it the other way.
Break it up into the 4 payments.
Right.
Unfortunately, schools, because of the amount of time they can collect, they can't do.
Well, they do have a 4-payment plan. I think Westport does it. Westport's the only one that I know of that allows them to pay in 2 payments.
I think Merritt does accept it, I'm not certain.
But the Westport's the only one that does it. The problem, as you say, with schools is that because they only collect in September and October, you only got 2 payments to do it. It doesn't have real value to the school districts. So you're right, it doesn't. But school districts would be involved in this too and have to accept a partial payment. So if you had a $1,000 school tax, you may have to accept $25 from the person. The interesting part
$1,000 school tax, like jump for joy.
The one thing on it that may be of interest to the towns is that every time you accept a partial payment, you can add a surcharge of $20. So you potentially could make some money on this if you did it. But who would want to come in and pay $50 and add a $20 surcharge? Just wouldn't make sense for the public to want to do it that way. I'm not saying you have to pay a surcharge, but the law says that you can charge up to $20 surcharge every time they come in and make a payment. It's a moneymaker from that sense, but I don't see how the public would want to do that and just come in and do it. It's not law yet, it hasn't been changed, it's a proposal, I just want to make you aware that it's out there, and we're going to be following. I know the treasurers are having a meeting tomorrow in Syracuse. It's going to be a major topic of discussion, how we're going to approach it from the state level, whether we're going to oppose it or not.
Okay.
That's it.
I have one thing that I've discussed with Dan Palmer and also with Mr. Diskin. It's regarding the Village of Port Henry will be done as of March 31st, and the town has to take over because of dissolution. But the village has contacted me. There's about $140,000 that's been re-levied, and they would like to, they're having a difficult time, not sure why, because they budgeted for a full year, but anyway, if they could receive early payment, which they usually would receive in April. And it benefits the town also because we want as many receivables or bills paid that, before they dissolve. So, do we need a resolution? I'm not even sure if we need a resolution, but
I think it'd be better that we would have something on the books so that I have something to say why I gave this to the village early.
It's not something out of the ordinary because we do it for towns with a lot of state lands.
Well, we pay your state land before that.
So I'm looking for a resolution that the county treasurer be authorized to pay the re-levy charges to the Village of Port Henry prior to April 1st. Moved by Mr. Morrow, second by Mr. Polini. Mr. Gillen, discussion. Being none, all in favor? Opposed, carried.
Thanks. As soon as we get that passed to full board, we'll issue a check.
Okay, any questions for Michael? Charlie?
Yes. It appears to me that the actions provided to the county by the Board of Supervisors certainly will be expediting the real estate auctions. But having this positive report today, there are other responsibilities that will have to occur before the auctions is successful, and what will that be?
I'm not sure.
Isn't there other agencies here in the county that have responsibilities to accomplish before the auction?
No, the auction is primarily done with my office and the county attorney's office.
There's really 4 departments involved in the process. There's really the county clerks that did the title search, information systems that provides the programs that kind of put everything together, treasurer's office and county attorneys. With the title search is done, it's really in Mike and Dan's office.
information services piece is done. It went very smoothly. Dan's department put this together, the notifications, once the searches were done by, one year was done by the county clerks, 1 year was done by the title companies that we contracted with, but they were very easily put together into one contact list. It went very smoothly with Dan's department. County attorney's legal stuff is done, it's in the paper, he set up the dates. Going forward from here, it's primarily my office that's going to do most of the work. The 14 and 15s, once those searches are done, now that we have a model, so to speak, how we did the 12 and 13th, the 14 and 15th, I think will be just as smooth with the information systems part of it. I've already spoken with the county attorney. We tentatively have some dates that I gave you as to how we want to handle the second half of this foreclosure, so I don't anticipate any issues with it. I think it'll go very smoothly.
I know we talked about setting up a fund from proceeds and so on, for some of these properties that are in horrid condition, that
County-owned?
that the county owns, so we can try to clean some of them up prior to going into the sale. So I don't know I can't remember, did we establish a fund or did we?
I don't think we did. I think the policy we talked about was if there was money in excess of the amount of taxes owed, that would go into some type of reserve fund that would be used for that, but so far we haven't had an auction where we had excess money. We may in these next two, we may or may not, I'm not sure. Going forward, hopefully that will happen because we'll be doing them quicker, making money on them. Our goal isn't to make money, but they obviously do in a lot of cases. That's where I don't know that we ever established anything.
So once we start that foreclosure and it carries through, we own it.
Once the judge signs the order, we own that parcel.
So if we're aware that there's a property out there that is probably not in our best interest to own, what happens with it? Such as a brownfield or a...
We can withdraw a parcel from foreclosure, not foreclose on it, and not get in the chain of title. We did that, Mr. Gilliland knows, we did that in Willsboro with a property that had an old Mrs. Silo. We pulled that out of the last auction.
Remain with the owner.
That's correct. So that's why we...
Fill the warrants.
Right, we continue to fill the warrants. The issue is, that's why we try to get these lists out to you all as supervisors so that you can let us know if there's an issue, because you know your town's better than anybody else, what's out there,
If the county takes ownership and the town decides to do a condemnation proceeding, then the county's it'd have to be against the county. They own the property.
That's why we try to get rid of them as quick as possible. Then we get to the sale, so we're not in it very long. And once we get title to it, we try to get them out of here within a month or 6 weeks so that we're not very long into it, so that you can't get us.
I mean, there's a couple places in the village of Fort Henry that the owners bought sight unseen, and then they buy them online or whatever, and they see them, and they don't do anything with it. They just sit back and wait for the county to own them once again.
There are things you can do in the terms and conditions if you choose to. And there are a few counties that do that, where they forbid people who have lost a property in foreclosure to ever buy a property in the county again. Not sure that's what we want to do. I'm not advocating or not advocating it. I'm just saying there are counties that write into their terms and conditions, if you had a property that went into foreclosure, you bought it and never paid the taxes, you're forbidden from ever coming back and buying another property from the county.
I would support that. I mean, there's so many loopholes out there. I know in my community this year, someone that owed back taxes had a son go in and bid, and they bought a property. And it was just...
I think the one there was a brother that did it.
A brother?
Yeah.
I mean, and now the individual that owned the taxes is...
I'm pretty sure that at some point that brother's going to sell that property to the relative.
I mean, how do you close up all these loopholes?
You can't. I mean, you can, there's always a way to get around them. I think it's a little cumbersome to... It really, we now can check people who owe taxes, and we've been successful in doing that. Every tax sale, we usually get 3 or 4 people that I tell you can't bid at this auction, because I'm there checking them. But for people who have lost a property at the foreclosure, you really can't react to it that quickly if they come in and register. It's kind of going to have to happen after the fact, where you sell it and then you research every name to see if they own the property they lost. It's potentially possible. You could contact them and say, we accepted your bid, but then we found out you violated the terms and conditions, so we're going to the backup bidder. But I think once people know that, they probably won't sign up again. You may potentially lose some bidders, but
The other
that's okay if we're
question
going
that I have is that should we be doing RFPs for the auction services? I mean, I know we haven't done them in a number of years.
That's a question for the county attorney.
But regardless if we should or shouldn't, I think we should. Because how do we know we're getting the best? And I'm not saying that the company that's there is not doing a good job. They are. But I think we should do RFPs, in my opinion. I think there's some companies out there that could do that job, possibly, and not charge as much.
They don't charge us anything.
Well, they charge the owner.
They charge the owner, they don't charge the county anything.
My point is, I think other businesses out there should have the same opportunity.
We've done RFPs in the past, we haven't done them lately. Huh?
Not in a while.
Not for a while, I think the last one was about 4 or 5 years ago.
Just bring it up for discussion.
Yeah.
So,
I got another question.
get us more information on that, Dan.
I can talk to Lundy, yeah.
Find out the last time we did one, I think.
Roby?
Mike, I have a question for you. I'm curious as to why, after the auctions, or during the time when we take possession of these properties that go to auction, why aren't those properties vacated? Because I have a situation in my town, a guy buys a house at auction, and the people are still in it. And then after he gets title, he's got to start an eviction proceeding. That's not proper. Those houses should be empty at the time that we take occupancy of them. And I found that troubling, that somebody would buy something at auction and then they'd have to go and throw the people out.
I'm not going to give you an answer that's probably the correct answer. What I'm going to tell you is that this is the way it's always been done.
Well, that's
No,
great.
it's the way that every county in the state does it. Now, whether it's right or not, I'm not saying. I don't know enough about the eviction process to say if this would take a longer time or hold up the auction, what the process is.
Cumbersome process to get somebody out.
I'm just curious,
Yeah. It's,
I think the attitude that's been taken is that if it goes in auction, that's somebody else's problem.
I think,
We got one in North Hudson, they've been there for years.
I think the other issue that I have that goes along with that, Mr. Paliti, is what our liability is for someone who's in there if we own it. And that's always been a concern
We do
of
have a
mine, too.
liability.
What's that?
I would think we have a
Yeah,
liability.
I would think so too. And I've asked various county attorneys, and they didn't seem to be as concerned. They said if we don't take any action, then we don't have liabilities.
Well,
This has gone on through 2 different county attorneys that I've...
If you think a house is tough, you ought to see what it's a business.
It would seem to me that we have plenty of time, if they haven't paid their taxes, to start it.
We can't start it until we own it.
Yeah, and when do we own it? How long before the tax sale?
Usually 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, if we obtain this, today, we're looking at 6 weeks before we actually sell it. And as Mr. Fowler said, 6 weeks is not a long time to go through an eviction process.
So can we change the dates?
We'd have to move the auction back later to get all these people out before we sold it. I don't know if we want to go that route. Do we wait and say we're not going to sell this until everybody's been out of there?
It's
It's a tough thing.
there's a situation right now in Mineville where someone did buy the property, the individual was still living in it, and, it worked out best for both parties because at least the individual can still stay there. They made arrangements where he's gonna rent it out to him. But I understand your problem. It gets real complicated. I remember years ago, if they happen to live in a mobile home. Now it gets really complicated because that's considered personal property. It's not.
Problem is, you own it and you don't get possession
It is,
of it at the
but if it's-
time, and the person in the building can do anything they want to the building.
I'm not sure if that's in our terms and conditions I don't know.
There are parts of the law that don't allow them to remove that parcel. If it's part of the assessment, they're really not legal, you can move it.
But it's a problem.
I can tell you, maybe Mr. Monty knows this situation in Lewis, where we've gone through 3 foreclosures and the guy still hasn't moved out. And
I just mentioned that to Roby.
just changed.
There's been 3 different owners, and they couldn't get them out, and this is probably going on a dozen years at least, that the person buys it, can't get the guy out of there, can't get an eviction happens, and they just give up on it and say, I'll walk away from it, and they're on their 3rd owner now. It's a good question, and I don't disagree with you, it's just difficult to do in the short time that we have, and if we want to delay it until we get them all out, we may be here a long time waiting to sell it.
Anything further for Mike? No, thank you. Dan?
I didn't really have anything, but if you have any questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer.
I went down yesterday, I did speak to Dan about this yesterday afternoon. I did go down yesterday to Ticonderoga, the North Country campus, and I met with Steve Terrell and also the president of the board and 2 faculty representatives. They wanted to discuss their 2017-18 budget. We had discussion on the feasibility study on the Lowe's building, also the CSEA contract, where they are with that at this point. And so what I recommended is that they contact Dan, which they will do, and they're going to put together a packet, and then they'll be here for Ways and Means, I assume?
Yeah, I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow.
So they'll be here for Ways and Means, and at that point in time, we'll probably have an executive session to discuss the contract, where they are with the CSEA contract, and then they will give the board an open session, obviously, a report on the upcoming budget. Any questions? Okay. Anything for Dan? If not, Charlie, real property before you fall asleep. I saw that big yawn.
Good morning. We put on each of your desks our annual report for 2016. I have a couple of legislative updates I'd like to talk about. Our county directors had a mini conference in conjunction with NISAC, and we did receive a report from the real property attorney on some legislative items to do with real property. One of them, of course, are more proposed changes to STAR. The first one that they're looking at is capping the STAR amount at 0%. Back in 2012, they capped it at 2%. You couldn't save more than 2% the year before. This year, they're looking at capping it at 0 so that the STAR benefit to taxpayers doesn't ever grow. This was proposed last year also, and it didn't pass. I don't know if it has any more traction this year than last year, but it is something that they're looking for. The budget implication for the state, they're saying that they would reduce their spending $50 million, which of course pushes that back to the local taxpayers. I can tell you that with the 2% cap that we currently are under, for the 16-17 school tax rolls, it pushed $176,000 back to the local taxpayers on their school tax bills. Another proposal that they're trying to push through is to make the income verification program mandatory instead of voluntary. Anyone who has an enhanced STAR, which are the people that are 65 and over, have the option of giving the assessor their Social Security number, and then they can add it into the DTF website, and it automatically will check their income through the income tax return, and then DTF will just shoot back to the local assessor whether they qualify or not. They're looking at making that mandatory, so anyone wouldn't have a choice. They'd have to turn over their Social Security number to have it entered into the system, and they would verify it every year. Now, not everybody files an income tax return, so they would have to come up with some kind of form for the people that don't file an income tax, but then they wouldn't need to come to their assessor every year for that. This won't apply to the people that have registered, that are now required to register with the state. These are only for our existing enhanced STAR people. I can tell you a good share of our enhanced people do take advantage of that income verification program. We do have quite a few that signed up for that, for the ease of not having to reapply every year.
Any questions on that?
They have updated the income limit for the 2017 roll year 2 for enhanced. It's set at $86,000 this year. Okay. And the third part of the changes that they're proposing to STAR are to relax the tax secrecy rules for the STAR credit. And this is actually something that we've been asking for because STAR is not the only residency-based exemption that there is. And if the state is discovering that people have 2 residences, maybe one out of state or whatever, they've been unwilling to share that information with the local assessor. You know, there are other residency-based exemptions where if the local assessor had that information, that maybe they're getting another exemption that they don't qualify for. So we're kind of hopeful that this one might pass. Also, just to make you aware that there are some companies that are trying to charge people to register for the STAR under the new registration program. It is free to register for STAR. No one should be paying anybody to help them do that. They certainly can come to our office for help to do it or your local assessor's office.
Any questions on STAR?
The other item that we talked about is a 480B exemption. If you remember back in 2015, DEC started proposing changes to the forest exemption. What they would like to do, and I've been told that this is not a budget bill, but to watch for it as a governor's program bill. What they're proposing is that there would be no new 480A exemptions. As you all well know, 480A, you have to have over 50 acres of forest land, and any eligible forest land becomes 80% exempt, pushing that burden back to all the other taxpayers. Any that are currently on, as this is being proposed, would remain. They would be grandfathered in until they're sold to a non-family member, and then they would be out of that program. The new 480B, it reduces the eligibility from 50 acres of land to 25. However, only 10 of it has to be forest land. They're also including open space in this. So if you have a 25-acre lot and you have 10 acres of forest land and the rest of it is open field, all of it would become eligible, which really doesn't make it a true forest exemption. It becomes an open space exemption. This new exemption would be a 40% reduction in assessment for all the eligible acres, anything deemed eligible. The 480A exemption, and I've been in contact with the DEC office in Albany, and they tell me that any municipality that is affected by a greater than 1% of their assessment roll, that they are receiving money from the state for the 480A program through the state aid. I've been unable to discern how you figure out how much of your state aid comes from that. I can tell you that the county does not qualify for that. 8 out of 18 towns do qualify, and 6 out of 15 schools qualify for that reimbursement. But again, I don't know how much it is. The exemption that's being proposed is not being proposed as an opt-in or an opt-out exemption. If it were to pass as it is, it would be mandatory, and there would be no choice but to grant it. Currently, out of our total acreage in Essex County, 50% is owned by the state of New York. That's their taxable land. 2%, they own another 2% that's non-taxable, and the 480 exemption comprises 4% of our total acreage, and the 480A forest exemption is another 11% of our total acreage, bringing our total of preserved land to 67%. Currently. The 480 and the 480A loss in taxable value is $74.9 million currently.
and the tax shift is over $1.4 million to the rest of the taxpayers. In looking at the 480B, I tried to figure out, what the potential impact could be to us. And looking at the worst-case scenario, another 15% of our total acreage could become undevelopable, unused, preserved, if you want to put it that way, could potentially bring our total to 82% of our total acreage. The loss in taxable value could potentially be $120 million. With an additional tax shift of almost $2 million. The increase in the county tax rate alone, if that were to happen, would be 6 cents per thousand.
Just, and while we're on this subject, as Charlie pointed out, the state owns about 50% of the land in Essex County, and they're looking, tomorrow night there'll be an informational meeting at the town of Mariah. The state is now, they want to buy Tub Mill Pond area, which is a large tract along the Ensign Pond Road. So we requested DEC to come down and hold an informational meeting. It does require a resolution of the town board, but it's my understanding that resolution is only if they're going to use Environmental Protection Fund monies to buy the property. If the board votes no, I'm sure they'll probably buy it anyway, so one way or another. But it is a beautiful parcel, and there's pros and cons. But I had Charlie run all the numbers for me on just for the town of Mariah on state land, 480A exemptions, and so on. And I was shocked when I looked at the numbers. It's and as you know, we all have to include those numbers in the back of our budgets. But take a look at them sometimes, and it's staggering. The properties that the state's looking to buy is currently in 480A. It's in private ownership. Between the town, county, and school, we take in approximately $25,000 in taxes. If the state were to own this property and it remains as wilderness, we would take in double that. The state would pay double that. So it's a double-edged sword if you're looking at it from that perspective. Any questions or comments?
Tom, did you say wilderness?
I believe
for the Tub Mill Marsh area?
Yeah, I'm not certain on that. We'll have more of and now your meeting's tomorrow night also on Hammond Pond, correct?
Yeah.
There's a portion of that in Mariah also.
But that's wild forest.
Wild forest? Yeah. So, anything further for Charlie?
Charlie?
Mr. Harrington?
Yes. And the board of assessment review function with only 4 members.
If it's a 5-member board, 4 is a quorum and they can function, yes. If it's a 3-man board, 2 is a quorum.
Charlie, I was talking to Charlie Woodson. If an assessor refuses to allow someone on their property to do their work, what actually occurs in that situation?
A property owner does have a right to refuse an assessor access. In that case, what we do is the assessor looks at pictometry. There are measurement tools on pictometry. They can measure a house, and then they have to estimate bedrooms, baths, square footage is not going to be as accurate as if you put a tape measure on the house, but the property owner absolutely has a right to deny access.
Okay.
The assessor has a right to go up to the door and knock on it and ask permission.
But if the owner does that and then gets an assessment that they don't like, do they then have the ability to challenge that assessment at the Board of Assessment review?
They can. They receive a notice of the change in their assessment, and they have an opportunity at that point. The assessor is required to set a certain number of hours with the assessment roll. They have a right to meet with them and go over the property data and see if it is accurate. If it's not, the assessor can say, well, okay, you deny me access. Now I'd like to go, with your permission to see and to measure and everything. They still can deny them access. But, if something is wrong, you really have put your assessment in jeopardy. How accurate is it? And, does the assessor have to take the person sitting there, their word for it, that what they're telling them is correct? They really should at that point let them have access if there's a discrepancy.
I think it's important, too, that the property owner realizes, I think we do letters in Mariah, if they're going to make a visit, that, there's no reason for an assessor to go inside that house.
We don't ask to go inside, no.
But usually, I know I've had people get upset when they just show up,
Well, here's the problem. You have to visit every property at least once every 6 years. And as you know, seasonal properties, people aren't home, they work during the day. You would pay out so much money in mileage, revisits, trying to go back. We try to be as efficient as we can. Even in how we hire, we try to hire someone from the southern part of Essex County and someone from the northern part to save mileage so that we can, not pay out somebody so much to be traveling to, because we are a big county and area. And, when towns are doing a reassessment project, we start out with a house-to-house visit. We'll right down the street, every single house, because as we've talked about, not everybody remembers that they need to get a building permit. But yeah, all that data needs to be collected.
Jerry? We've had that same problem, and as we all probably have got phone calls, complaints about everything in our town, the supervisors do. And my answer to the landowner is, did you let them on your property to measure the house and everything? The answer is no, and I'm not going to let them. Then too bad. That's what it's going to be. Then they can grieve it if they want to. They're not going to win there either, because if they don't allow anybody on there to measure it, to truthfully go there, we don't ask to go through the houses or anything like that.
Right, we don't gain access.
I'll stand behind my assessor 100%. What have you got to hide those people if you don't want them on there? Building out back or something that you didn't get a permit for? So,
and at that point, they can go to the Board of Assessment Review, and they can choose to go to small claims or file an Article 7 if they disagree with their assessment.
Yes, Charlie.
Tom, in my case, the assessor did not take and force her way to any, or say that she had to be inside the house to look at the interior of it. This individual family does not want anybody on their property, period.
That's their right.
Yep. So I just wanted to make that a point, that we'll have to go with the way Charlie is speaking with the committee. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Monk.
I think that's a perfect assessment of it. They have the right, but just like Tom and Charlie said, when it comes to the assessment review process, if you're not letting us on the property, we can't, determine, and pictometry is only as good as the update, and now we're going to have a new update, which is going to make things a lot better, because we're looking at 2010 pictures, and a lot can happen, both pros and cons. You can take a building down, you can add a building that we might not know about. I think that's going to help alleviate some of the issues, having a more accurate picture of what's going on.
Yeah, and our measurements are going to be better too. I'm, really grateful that this flyover is going to happen again. Thank you. The closer they're flying, the better our measurements will be too for those that we can't access.
Okay, anything further on that subject? Okay.
Does Charlie need a resolution accepting your annual report?
Yeah, we should do that.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, I need a resolution moved by Mr. Morrow, second by Mr. Politi. Discussion? Being none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Tom,
Yep, I'm sorry.
I should have said this under discussion. Charlie's representative is working in our town right now, helping my assessor out, and I want to thank Charlie and her crew up there for all the help you give us on reassessing and everything else. Thank you, Charlie. You do an excellent job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I think we all would concur with that. Thank you. Okay, is there anything further to come before finance? If not, we stand adjourned.